Hey everybody, Gisele Grenier here from artplace.ca. Well, 2 weeks before Christmas, and I'm basically talking to you, being super busy, wanting to create some cute little interesting stocking stuffers, or they didn't even have to be for Christmas, it could be anything that's super fast, but doesn't look like it was done super fast. All right, so the idea for this is that there's a whole slew of projects that I'm going to be doing. The video is going to be short. The idea is you take that one project, you can create like 10 of them in a batch. So the idea is to create 10 pieces within an hour. So you can have 10 gifts in an hour. I was inspired by Charlie Brown and a bag of rocks, bag of coal. That's what's going to be all these little rock paintings inspired by the holidays, but you don't have to do them for holidays. You can do them for any other theme. If you don't have rocks, if you go to the dollar store, you can buy little mini canvases, you can buy little wooden cutouts, anything. The idea is to have something that's about this big, okay? All you need is some gesso or some primer, some gesso primer, and some paint. Stuff that you already have. Now, I am going to be using stencils because it's faster, but you don't have to use stencils. You can basically look at the idea and you can hand paint, okay? But stencils are faster. So the concept for this is that you do all the prep at once, you do all the base coating at once, you do all the stenciling at once, you basically do each step, you do that for all 10 pieces. Then the next step, all 10 pieces. So by the time you go from this to this to this to this, by the time you're right here, this one's likely dry, then you go to the next step and do this, this, this. So 10 pieces in an hour. The only adjustment there is drying time. So whereas right now, we're preparing for a massive storm, our first major winter storm of the season. The furnace has been going crazy, running, so things will dry very, very quickly. Okay? Whereas if you're in more of a humid, warm, humid environment, or cool environment, I should say, it'll take a little bit longer to dry. But you know what? Get your trusty heat gun. That'll save the time. All right, let's go down to the table. And so you can see I've got my box of rocks, And this is just stuff that I've collected over the summer. I've primed some with gesso. Some are not primed. I've got some little ones. I've got some escarpment rock. So let me just move this out of the way because it's super heavy. And just basically to show you, the rock starts like this. You can apply a primer and then you can do the base coat. So it's up to you. I'm going to... Oh, and a lot of the rocks that I have, you can see that I've primed with just one coat of gesso. The first rock that I'm going to be doing is basically going to be black. You can use black gesso if you want. Or you use, this is a cream colored paint. Then you just paint it black. It doesn't matter. But the idea is to do everything at once. So don't think, oh, I'm going to do a blue rock. Oh, I'm going to do a red rock. Oh, I have to paint them all differently. No. Wash them all at the same time. Then prep them all with either a sealer, so you seal all the rocks at the same time, or just gesso them with white gesso all at the same time. Okay, so the idea is that you do it all at the same time. Doesn't matter if the rock will end up being black, purple, or green. White gesso, you're just adding that protection in there. If you don't have gesso, you can try using just white paint. The whole thing is you want the paint to stick, so make sure that you wash the rock really, really well. Hot soapy water, scrub, rinse, and then let it air dry. Okay, so I'm not going to be covering all the prep, and this video is a little bit longer because I'm going over all the steps. All the next videos are we're going to get right into painting. So this is just one that I did quite a while ago, and so again, just same type of paint, and it's just little dots and a little flower. We're really, really simple. So we start with this. We end up with a very thin coat of gesso, and then we do a base coat. So for this one here, I'm going to cover up all the steps and then we'll move on. So with the gesso, and I'm going to do one of each. Again, as I said, this is going to be a little bit longer. And let me get a small brush. So if we just take the raw rock, which has been painted, and you're just going to apply the gesso. And you want it to be thin. I put a little bit too much on there because I'm rushing. So you want it to be thin. So you do the one side, you let it aside to dry. Okay, easy peasy. Then, oh my goodness. And so now for the black, I'll just do it on this side. So the black's the same thing. And this is especially if you're going to be doing a dark stone. Gesso can be, depending on how you use it and the brands all have. Gesso can be a lot more economical than paint. And think of the gesso as the primer. So, you know, if you're going to be doing a lot of this stuff, invest in some gesso or at least some primer or a sealer, because you don't want to be giving these away as gifts and then the paint starts to peel off. So doesn't really matter which one you end up doing. But so you're going to do the top side, then you're going to do the bottom side. If you know that you're going to be creating about 20 rocks that are all going to be really dark, just do them with black gesso. But ideally, you just do a whole bunch of rocks with white gesso. You do the top, do a whole bunch. Then by the time you get to over here, likely this one's going to be dry. You flip it, you prime the other side, let it go. Then by the time you're done here, it would have been dry. Then you can just do the sides and just a little bit of a touch up. You really only need one coat of gesso on there, is because you're going to be doing your painting. All right. So, guess what would help for you to know what it's 2 weeks no videos and I'm all flustered. I was using the DecoArt Media gesso, the white gesso, and the black gesso. Sorry, my idea is to make this fast for you. I'm going a little too fast. So I'm going to move these aside. Yeah, 2 weeks without doing 2 weeks without doing a video is a bit much for me. I was going on withdrawal. So now this one here I primed with a titanium buff paint. It doesn't matter, because I had planned on something for this project. I'm not going to do that particular project. What I want to do, the idea is I'm going to be making it sort of like chromatic black, but not chromatic black. Because I need the base to be opaque, I don't want to have to be painting with chromatic black, which is black made with color, usually a blue and a brown, or even a alizarin crimson and a green, because those are more transparent colors, which requires more layers of paint. More layers of paint means more time. So by taking carbon black, which is more opaque, and then just a phthalo blue to make it more luminescent, that's how I'm going to do the base. And then I'm going to take a stencil. So I will find something that's going to fit. So maybe I'll use this one here. Put that there. And then use a silver metallic. So the fluid acrylics and carbon black phthalo blue as the base, and then the silver metallic as the stencil. Pretty easy. Now, as I keep going through the projects, I'm going to be going along the same premise, but trying different things so they become unique. You can use stencil, you can stamp, you can do whatever you want, but I only have so many supplies, so I'm going to use what I have. And for this whole series, I am not buying anything new. I'm using what I have. Okay. Brushes, I've got a large brush which you can use for the basing, and an experiment for splattering is, you can use these brushes here, bristle around. I've got a little stencil brush, a little liner brush. So again, use whatever you have. I'm going to use my DIY Stay Wet palette. So the idea of using black with phthalo blue is strictly to get the opacity from the black. You could even use the gesso if you want. And so I'm going to go with roughly equal mixtures of carbon black and phthalo blue. Can you see that mixture there? Love that. So once you've got your rock that's primed, so you're going to have all your rocks there. So I'm going to use 10 as the base. So you start with a 1 and dry brush, and you're just going to paint. The larger the brush, the better, because it goes faster. And don't use a super expensive brush, because rock painting is rough on your brushes. And because the rocks are textured, some of them have little pit holes in that, you may need to use your brush and kind of pounce a little bit to get the paint right inside the holes. So that's done. You move on to the next rock. By the time you get to the end of, let's say, the 10 rocks or your 10 mini canvases or 10 whatever, then you flip this over. Repeat the same step on the other side. You do the rest. By the time you get to the end, this will be dry. Then you just do the sides. You may not need to do the sides, or you just want to maybe touch up some of the holes here. I've got a really big hole on this one. So you just kind of do a touch up, do the rest, and by the time that you've done that, this one will have been dry. Also use a heat gun if you want, just when you're painting on rocks. If you use a heat gun, you must let everything come to room temperature, because the rock holds the heat a lot longer, and you don't want to put the paint on the rock and then it basically burn. It would have to be really, really hot for that, but it can still be done that way. All right. So once that is dry, then you can, depending on if you're using a really satin finish, you can, if your paint is really satiny, you can put, you know, matte medium on that just to get rid of the shine. With the fluid acrylics, I like the look, but see that the gesso, very, very flat finish. So I'm going to take a heat gun to this, and I'll show you what the two look like, and you can decide which finish you like the best. All right, so I've prepared another rock, and to give you some ideas. So what I've done, so this is the finish with just black gesso. This is the finish just with the paint. Okay. This is the finish with matte medium on it. So you can see the not quite as shiny. So just gesso, just paint with matte medium. And I use the DecoArt medium matte medium. So it's up to you what kind of finish that you want. I really like the gesso one because this really does look like coal. Stones are a little bit warm, so they'll come down to room temperature as I go. Now what I did is over here I put down some DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics metallic. It's a silver. It's very fluid, so the challenge is going to be being able to stencil something really small without it seeping under the stencil. And I did 2 rocks because if the stencil doesn't work, I can always hand paint it. So let's work on this one first. So these particular stencils here, they're the gloss enamel ones, and they have an adhesive on the back, so they're removable. So because the rock is a really odd shape, that it's, and this is, I've used the stencil so many times, the adhesion's starting to break down. You can always spray. And paper towel. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to end up hand painting. I've never had success doing detail stenciling with the fluid acrylics, the metallics. We'll see. So loading the brush with a good amount of paint and then going on a paper towel, pouncing to remove the excess. Then come over here. And I'm just using a little stencil brush. I can see the gauge on my microphone. It's going crazy when I might do stuff like this. Not quite enough paint. I'm going to go over again. So it's like the first one is always like a throwaway. I like to call it throwaway. It's just gauging the right amount of paint. Now, one thing I forgot to tell you, so you're going to do one layer, do all the stones and come back. You can leave the stencil on there. I'm sure you can have a bunch of different stencils, then you can just stencil another layer if you need to. Now I forgot what I was going to tell you. Oh, shoot. I forgot. Oh, yeah. So if you don't have a stencil, I mean, you can always... Oh, now remember, if you don't have a stencil, you can always hand paint it. With this, a question I always get after teaching this in the class is, do I varnish the stones? You can, but you'd have to varnish in something glossy because you're using a metallic paint. And if you put a matte medium or matte varnish over metallic paint, you're going to lose the shine. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Then I'll go over and do the other one. Okay. One of the things too that you can do with this, tint the paint with a little bit of color. But I'm going to show you something else later on. Again, I'm using the supplies I have, and that's to get you inspired to use what you have. Don't go and buy a whole bunch of stuff just to create a project. Use what you have. These are so super fast. Once the rock is base coated and primed and base coated, it really is under a minute to do this. And because I use gesso underneath and the paint really sticks to the gesso, I don't need to varnish. Now, if it's going outside, if you know the person's going to put it outside, then you can varnish it. But what you can do is you can just varnish just to be safe. Okay, so I'm going to put that where, I'm going to put this into a little bucket of water I have waiting. So I got a little bit of a stencil piece here, so I can take a little bit of paint and I can just touch up like that. And this would, the touch up really needs to be with gesso because it's the finish. So a little bit of gesso. And using the same paint that you based your rock with, it'll have the same finish, so it's not going to look spotty. All right, that's it. How fast was that? So you're going to do this really for, you know, a batch of 10 stones. Coasters would be another great thing. As I go through this, I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of rocks, and I'm going to also pick out a bunch of different other little things that you can use just to get you inspired, because one of the emails that I get on a frequent basis saying, I love what you're doing and what you're using, but what if I don't have? And when I say, well, look around your house, use what you have, and you say, well, I have this, this, and this, but I can't see it. People can't seem to take the idea and put it onto something else. And it's just a matter of just visioning it. So I'm going to show you a whole bunch of options over the next several videos, and hopefully that'll spark some ideas. All right, so that's it. So literally, without me talking and doing the whole explaining all that stuff, this, including drying time, 5 minutes. That's it. All right, and you can personalize it with a person's name. I'm not doing it at this point. I just want to show you a whole bunch of stuff to get you inspired. And speaking about being inspired, I will see you in the next video.